Manual focus. For some, it's a way of life. For others, something occasional. And for many of you, you're like, I have an autofocus camera and lenses. I don't do manual focus. Today, let's talk about why it is still very important and relevant in late 2021, why to practice it, and why you might get hooked on manual focus. Hi, my name is Leigh. I have been sharing videos here every week on YouTube for about 12 years. Every one of them has at least something to do with photography. I would love it if you would subscribe. I also have complete photography courses available. Each one takes you from start to completed photo, including gear, settings, creativity, and editing. I use a practical and easy to understand approach. So whether you are a complete beginner or someone who simply wants to explore creativity maybe, or to refresh your memory on some of the technicals, you'll enjoy these courses. My courses are available to my members, and there is a link in the description to learn more about channel membership so you can see those courses. Autofocus has been around in various forms since the late 70s and early 80s with some wild early implementations, and then things started taking shape with cameras like the Nikon F4 SLR in 1988. While the introduction of autofocus might seem to make manual focus irrelevant, especially considering all of the detection and tracking modes that cameras have these days, that's not really the whole story. There are manual focus lenses for sale today, both from major manufacturers and from smaller independent lens manufacturers. And many autofocus lenses offer a manual focus override. Plus, depending on your camera, it may have some fairly sophisticated manual focus helper options. First, let's talk lenses and why a manual focus lens might be attractive to you. With some exceptions, manual focus lenses are less expensive than their autofocus counterparts. They're just less complicated. And we all like to save money. As a quick tip though, if you're just getting started with manual focus and you're a bit nervous about it, with wide focal lengths, like this 20mm Viltrox lens for Nikon Z, it's super easy to focus on landscapes and other subjects, and you may find that you spend much of your time with the lens simply set to infinity focus. Wide angle is easier, especially when getting started, because your depth of field is deeper, even at wide apertures, as compared to normal or telephoto focal lengths. You have just a greater margin for error. And keep in mind, your results may be indistinguishable from more expensive autofocus lens options. Beyond cost, manual focus lenses can extend your brand of choice. Raymond and I have a couple of M-mount lenses, but no M-mount camera. We adapt these inherently low-tech lenses to our 3 mirrorless systems and take advantage of their simple operation and very good image quality. The same holds true with several of our older F-mount lenses. Like the M-mount lenses, these can be adapted to a number of systems, including the L-mount, Z-mount, and Sony E-mount systems that I have back here. And as long as you're willing to focus manually, you've unlocked legendary lenses that you may already have from older systems, or that you might be eager to pick up for pennies on the dollar compared to newer offerings. If you've been around on this channel for a while, you know that Raymond and I have gone deep into lens adapters. And every time we consider purchasing a new, tricked out autofocus lens, we look at our own collection and also at used alternatives as a sanity check. Do we really need this new lens, or would something we already have, or maybe an older manual focus lens, do the job? Maybe even making my photography a more mindful and enjoyable process. Even this old Nikon 50mm f1.8 Series E lens, which was a low-cost prime even in its heyday, comes to life on our Leica cameras, Nikon Z, and the others back there. Want to bring back the glamour of 1970s era sports and action photography? Here's our Nikon 80-200 f4 push-pull manual focus zoom on our Leica SL2. Modern image capture technology with vintage goodness, and bringing back the ancient art of manually focusing and zooming with the same ring. Look, if it's wrong to bring out these classic lenses and tune my technique with them, I don't want to be right. I mean, there's a time and a place for autofocus and all of the high-tech options, but I also truly enjoy slowing down to manual focus, and I enjoy the variety that I'm afforded using older lenses with newer bodies. More on that in a minute. Now, is it just about that vintage feel? Not quite. And like I mentioned earlier, even super modern, recently released autofocus lenses can be set to manually focus, and some offer manual focus override, even while everything is set to autofocus. Why? Autofocus doesn't always know what you want and what you're thinking about your composition. The classic example is tree branches in front of a bird or a person or anything else coming between you and your subject. It's often very easy to see the camera thinking, oh, look, I nailed it. I found something in your focus area and I focused on it. Or when I was in Yellowstone a few months ago with these bears, the super duper smart tracking on the Sony Alpha 1 kept jumping off of the bears and onto the grasses in front of the bears. The bears were quite far away. It was raining a bit. These things happen. Now, these are the typical things that photographers do in those situations. You can release your shutter release button or back button if you use that, and then press again to have the camera refocus. Or you can move the focus around a bit. Sometimes there's an option to change the size of the focus area, and you might be able to get around the tree branches or grasses that way. Or at Yellowstone, I could have switched from a tracking autofocus mode to a non-tracking mode. Instead of arguing with your camera, though, you can recognize the situation, flip the manual focus switch on your lens or in the camera quickly, and then with a twist of your wrist, your subject is brought into focus. Yes, it takes some practice. However, depending on your mirrorless camera or even a DSLR or SLR, you very likely have some options in the camera's settings to assist you. Fujifilm has options that even include a virtual split image rangefinder to help with the process, while blinking highlights in areas of high contrast is an option in every mirrorless cameras that we've used. On top of that, cameras with an electronic viewfinder, or if you are using live view on cameras with an optical viewfinder, you can often punch in on the subject in the viewfinder or on the LCD screen, meaning that you can see the subject more closely to fine-tune focus without actually zooming in your lens. Manual focus can still take a moment longer, even with those helpers, but it's less time fighting with your camera's autofocus logic, and it puts you in control of what's in focus and when. And I'm not saying to just set the camera over to manual focus and leave it there forever and ever, but it helps to be well practiced with manually focusing and knowing your lens's manual focus override capabilities for those challenging situations where you and the camera might not quite be on the same page. And finally, if you're like me, you're very curious about the past, present, and future of photography gear. For Raymond and I both, using manual focus more in the last couple years has unlocked forgotten gear, some of which has been right here on the shelves, along with other vintage gear that we've recently acquired that is new to us. We've been spending a ridiculous amount of time with this new Nikon Fm3a that we purchased from KEH.com, alongside a more modern autofocus Nikon F6, also purchased from KEH. Both are incredible, timeless implementations of film cameras, and only one has autofocus capability. The Fm3a, with the exception of a meter, is a fully manual and mechanical camera. If you're using this camera, you're manually focusing. Same with this Nikon FG and this Canon AE1. For me, using this older gear is fun and therapeutic, and it intentionally disrupts my creative process. In the past 2 months, let's say, I've shot as much with the Fm3a as I have with my digital bodies, so at least half the time I've been focusing manually. And again, don't get me wrong, if I'm out photographing birds or jackrabbits on a modern mirrorless camera, animal eye autofocus and tracking, doing its thing, I'm a happy camper. But for those days when I'm outside, just putting whatever interesting things come my way onto film or into a digital file, the line between autofocus and manual focus is blurring for me. No pun intended. So manual focus lenses are typically less expensive than their autofocus counterparts. They open up a greater variety of gear that you can use. They can provide new and different looks to your photos, and they can shake up your process. But I realize that not everyone works with their camera. Not everyone needs the creative disruption like I do. But if you take nothing else from this video, take this. Practice switching your camera or lens over to manual focus and practice manual focusing so you're ready if you need to use it. It has saved me time and frustration along with gaining me more usable shots more times than I can count. Now it's time to make it all about you. Is manual focus something that you've tried? Or maybe it's something that you've done forever and just haven't stopped doing? Do you have some older lenses ripe for adapting to modern bodies? Or are you a Leica M-mount shooter wondering what all the fuss is about with autofocus anyway? Let me know down in the comments. And all questions about manual focusing and other photography topics are fair as well. Remember, I have added some links in the description to learn more about channel membership, to see courses and the other things that members get. And I will add my affiliate links for KEH if you're interested in perusing their manual lens collection. It is stellar. Please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you for watching.